I'm Tony Ruiz of Gold Derby here with Questlove, the director of the amazing new documentary Summer of Soul. And this is your first time as a director. Was there ever a moment where you thought, we were talking just before about you wanting to land the plane, was there ever a doubt in your mind that you'd even be able to take off in this plane to be a director?
I'll say this much. It was very intimidating at first. But I'll say that once I got to spend 5 months, I was given 40 hours of footage. And once I got to spend 5 months with this 40 hours of footage on a 24/7 loop, I basically kept this playing constantly in my bedroom, in my kitchen, living room, got a screen in my bathroom, shower, my office, my studio. It's on constant 24-hour loop. And so I'll say that it was intimidating at first, but then, I felt an obligation and a pressure to really do right by history. And that was my guide. I had a lot of support from my team, kind of technically and creatively. And, I asked a lot of questions, and I asked other directors and producers, but, at the end, I treated this as I do with how I make music, which is, at the end of the day, is, you got to be a storyteller.
Yeah, and this particular story, it's just such an interesting confluence of events that led to this footage, this whole Harlem Cultural Festival really being buried in more, both figuratively and literally, for all this time. Why do you think this really seminal moment went under the radar for so long?
That's kind of the that's the $1 million question. I will say that for me, and I do cover the topic of Black erasure, where I think oftentimes it could be painted. One could paint this sort of as a way of saying, like, well, there was an army brigade physically holding back anyone trying to get to the reels to release this film. But it's not that. It's just the fact that it was just ever so casually. People oftentimes think that even if it's done in a casual way, that it doesn't count as the same as someone being held at gunpoint, being prevented from doing an action. But, it's, at least from my observation and looking at Hal Tolshin, the producer that had this footage in the first place, for him, the rejection letters and the correspondence, it's done rather casually. And that's just as dangerous as someone physically holding it back. So I will say that even though 50 years out the gate seems like an unfair time, I wouldn't hesitate to say that it maybe its time is now, and I still feel like this can work its magic and work its juju, if you will, some 50 years out the gate.
Yeah, there's a moment in the film, I don't remember who says it, but I'm paraphrasing, but somebody says, the events of the late 1960s, he describes it as, seeing white America at its worst. And I remember hearing that line and thinking to myself, has it really gotten any better? I mean, this film seems just as relevant now, if not even more so.
All right, so when during the pre-production phase, I was trying to figure out, like, who's this film really for? Like, who's my core film, and what's the order of the generations? Because, you have the fortunate few who's dubbed, I guess those are anyone up there with, Betty White that's approaching 100 or, in their 90s. You have baby boomers who are now just turning 80 years old and whatnot. And then you have Gen X who's, kissing 60 and between 40 and 60. And then millennials who are, I guess you could say like late 80s, and Gen Z, the post aughts generation right now. With millennials and Gen Z, I was a little bit stuck in thinking like, how am I going to connect this particular generation? Like, how will I connect them? And it's so weird. At one point, I thought, oh God, one of us is going to have to reach out to Drake to see if he'll talk about his uncle playing bass in Sly and the Family Stone. Larry Graham is Drake's uncle. And I thought that was my only connection to Gen Z, millennials and Gen Z, in terms of this film. And, come late 2019, especially 2020, which, the first part of 2020, we hadn't done like all of our principal shots yet. So, everyday life, something new was happening, be it the worrying about the virus spreading, protecting our families, civil unrest in the streets with George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, then the confusion over the election. By the summertime, it was like, yo, this is starting to look like 1967, 68, 69. Like, you can't tell the difference between modern news footage and the footage that we have in our movie. And then that's when I realized, like, oh, this is how you're going to connect millennials and Gen Z. They're living this right now. So, timing is everything. Like, had this film come out in 2017, 2018, it's very much possible. It's quite possible that this would have just been a really nice curation of 17 songs and that's it, but the further we got into time, that's when I knew I had a responsibility in really explaining history to explain our present.
Yeah, the film, to me, it's punctuated by all these great these musical performances. But I find it fascinating. The beginning with Stevie Wonder, and then you have the Mavis Staples and Mahalia Jackson, part in the middle, and then kind of Nina Simone at the end. How did you decide where you were going to place the musical numbers in the narrative of what you were trying to tell?
Okay, so my production partner, Joseph Patel, he wisely, after I was like racking my brain, like I still don't know what story to tell. He said to me, well, okay, if this were a DJ gig, how would you prepare for this? And then he's like, if this were a Roots show, or if this is Jay-Z calling you up to say, put together his show, what's your process? Now, when I do that, everything I do in my professional life, with the exception of book writing, I work backwards. The very first question that I ask is, what's the feeling that I want, people walking away with when they see this? And so I was kind of working backwards. And a funny thing happened, again, due to the pandemic. The pandemic changes the whole entire scope and trajectory of this film. And now, mind you, in the early pandemic, my girlfriend and I are staying on our friend's farm or apple orchard. And it's like a large estate, and we're with staying with their family and whatnot. And so I kind of use this family as my quasi focus group. And every other day I'd have new dailies to show, okay, guys, give me your opinion on this. What does this mean to you? And, you know, oftentimes when I do with music as well, like I choose people who aren't my audience to look at this. Like, because it's easy to show your boys something, but you don't want your boys showing you, you know, I don't want yes men like, yo, that's dope. I mean, you know, I wanted people that I don't know that well, giving me instruction. The patriarch of the family said, you know, I see where you're going. This is good, but, you know, it still feels like Ken Burns. Like, I don't know what your voice is. Like, what's going to tell me that this is your movie? Like, and I was, you know, I was hyper aware to not insert myself. I didn't want this to be the Questlove Summer of Soul or that sort of thing. So I'll say that I was racking my brain, like, what's going to tell the world this is my film? And I don't know why I was looking at my notes. I made an observation that there were more drum solos in this film than there were guitar solos or even saxophone solos. Like, the drums are the most soloed instrument, which is weird when you come to think of it, because usually like a saxophone or piano is the thing that's the solo. But once I saw Stevie Wonder doing that, what instantly came in my brain was it's the internet meme. You know, often on Twitter, someone will say, show me that you're blah, 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 without telling me that you're blah, blah, blah. And I felt like that Stevie Wonder drum solo was the closest that I could do the proverbial wink to the audience to let them know this is a Questlove film without me being in that film. So I thought it was something that just instantly grabs you at the top. So yeah, I mostly just worked backwards. And, you know, as far as choosing the footage, in those 5 months, like I didn't want to make it work. I didn't want to sit for like 4 hours and watch a whole bunch of things and take notes. So I just had this thing on 24-hour loop for 5 months. And if something gave me goosebumps, you know, I'd wake up out of my sleep and see, oh my God, what's this woman doing? And write it down. And that's how I kept notes.
Yeah, that uninterrupted duet with Mahalia and Mavis is just, it gives me chills just thinking about it. And what was it about that particular performance that made you say, you know what, we're going to show this complete thing?
Well, I'm going to tell you, one, this is the magic of editing and the magic of timing. Number one, there's three main things that I discovered with this film. When people ask me, like, well, what didn't we see? And only in the notes of Hal Tolshin and his box of notes did we get the story that, number one, Aretha Franklin was an 11th hour no-show. It was Aretha Franklin that was supposed to sing Precious Lord with Mahalia Jackson. And Mavis Staples was there to pick up the baton and really go for it. And you know, it's weird. I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm almost glad this happened the way that it happened. And another weird thing is that was my initial ending for the movie. And my first cut, I instantly knew, yo, this is the summit meeting of a century. It's the showdown. This is the star of the moment. Another fun fact, Mahalia Jackson was the highest paid performer at $10,000 back then, which according to my inflation calendar, I think was the equivalent to $75,000, 1969. Side note, you can get Sly and the Family Stone very cheap back then for just $2,500. So at the end of the film, when we were all given notes, I was a little I was a little worrisome that all of my focus groups that I was showing, that they really weren't on fire for what they just saw. And I thought, well, okay, this film is like 3 hours and 25 minutes and da 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 da. And someone gave me a note that I took to heart, and they said, well, the ending is really sweet. And the ending is also the kind of Hollywood ending that you would expect. Like putting that at the end of the film gave you a nicely wrapped, can't we all just get along Hollywood ending. And the thing was, when we first crafted that draft, that was like the week that George Floyd happened. So what's happening in our outside life was just madness and fire. And for some reason, it just kept hitting me in the stomach like, yeah, it's good, but it's not the response I wanted. And maybe I need a more fiery, like what would make this film relevant for today? Is it ending on this song? So I wrestled with that for the longest. And then Joseph, our producer, said, I bet you that if you traded places and put Nina Simone where Mavis is and put Mavis where Nina Simone is, you'll probably feel different about the film. You know, one editing trick can turn your whole thing around. And sure enough, with Nina ending it, it felt like today, like you felt more on fire. And with that in the middle, with Precious Lord in the middle, suddenly it had a newfound energy to it that I never expected. So yes, this is what I also do in the music world, like as far as figuring out which orders of songs should happen. And, you know, so I pretty much did the same process with this movie.
Well, yeah, and the film has hit such a chord, you know, with the way it was received at Sundance and you know the critical acclaim and so, you know, what has it been like for you as a first-time director to have your first film received this way?
Man, look, this is all I know is that probably the biggest thing that I've learned about myself in this process. Well, you know, Stevie Wonder told me in the film that he'd never let his dreams, he would never ever let like fear put his dreams to sleep. And, you know, and I explained to people from the beginning, like having this film was not just making a music film. This was me getting a rare chance to correct history, to correct Black history. So it's almost like the thing where, you know, the first time I won my Grammy, walking that long walk from my chair to the Grammy stage with Erykah Badu walking in front of me, and she's wearing a long train of a dress. My every word was, do not trip on live television. Do not trip on live television. Do not trip on live television. And I tripped, you know? And so, you know, with me, just getting those voices out of my head, you know, and those voices in your head, you'll say things to yourself that you would never let anyone else ever say to you in this lifetime. So, you know, I will say that making this film taught me that I need to listen to my dreams more and turn up the volume and listening to my dreams and follow my heart, which is way different than listening to the voice inside your head. Your brain and your heart are two entirely different entities that are both vying for your attention, you know, to either follow your heart or your brain. So I'll say now, I fear less because this is probably one of the most fearful near bungee jump experiences I've ever had in my life. So I listen less to that negative voice in my head. And, you know, I use Tony Lawrence as a spirit guide because this is a guy that organized a film festival on just faith just the sheer audacity of it. So, Tony was my North Star. And, oftentimes I'll just ask, what would Tony Lawrence do in this situation? Even beyond the film, that's what my new thing is. What would Tony Lawrence do? So no more fight or flight for me. So I embrace everything now.
And hopefully wearing Tony Lawrence's wardrobe, because my God.
That guy knew the power of, what do they call it? Peacocking? Yeah. Yeah.
It's just such an incredible film. Questlove, thank you so much. Everybody go to goldderby.com, make your predictions for the Oscars and the Golden Globes and SAGs, and stay tuned for interviews with more contenders throughout the season. Questlove, congratulations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate it.